Canada is one of the world's richest and most powerful economies. It has the technology, the scientists, the uranium. It has strong industrial capacity. Yet it has still chosen not to build nuclear weapons. It's even bigger than the United States. But why didn't this country build nuclear weapons for its own safety? Let's explore the dark psychology behind that decision. Size has never been the real source of power. Nuclear weapons are not just military tools, they are psychological tools. They exist to send one message: don't challenge me. Fear-based power. But fear has a cost. It requires constant tension, constant readiness, constant risk. Fear keeps everyone alert, including the people who depend on it. Canada rejected that model. But here's what most people miss. Canada did not reject nuclear technology, it rejected nuclear intimidation. Instead of building weapons, Canada invested in nuclear power, peaceful nuclear energy, used not to threaten others, but to run the country. Canada uses nuclear reactors to produce a large portion of its electricity, reliable, low carbon, always available, no fuel panic, no weather dependence, no constant crisis. This creates something extremely valuable: energy stability. And energy stability quietly supports everything else: hospitals, industries, cities, daily life. Nuclear technology in Canada is also used for medicine, cancer treatments, medical imaging, life-saving diagnostics. The same science that could be used for destruction is used instead to extend life. Canada's security situation is not like that of many other countries. On one side, it is protected by vast oceans. On the other, it borders the world's most powerful nuclear-armed country, the United States. This reality matters because security does not always come from weapons. Often, security comes from geography and from strong alliances. Canada's closest neighbor is not its enemy, it is its strongest security partner. This means something important. Canada does not live under an immediate fear of existential threat. And when a country does not feel threatened at its core, the way it thinks begins to change. Instead of relying on fear to project strength, Canada chose a path of peaceful progress. It understood something simple. When money is poured into weapons, society learns fear. But when money is invested in people, society becomes stable. That is why Canada placed greater focus on education, to build skilled, thoughtful, and productive citizens for the long term. It invested heavily in hospitals and public healthcare, so people could feel basic security without constant anxiety about the future. It strengthened industry and infrastructure, so everyday life could remain reliable and predictable. These decisions were not emotional, they were strategic. In a calm society, people feel less fear, are less drawn to extremes, and are more willing to follow systems. That is real strength. Canada did not avoid nuclear weapons because it lacked the ability. That idea is false. It avoided them because it did not need them. It understood that peaceful progress is the strongest path over the long term. That choice matters psychologically. It tells people something important. Power doesn't have to look dangerous to be effective. There's also an economic layer. Nuclear weapons are extremely expensive, but it's not that Canada can't afford them. Weapons don't produce value, they only promise retaliation. Canada chose a different investment: infrastructure, healthcare, energy, predictability. This wasn't idealism, it was behavioral economics. Reduce volatility, lower uncertainty, stabilize daily life. A calm society is easier to manage than a fearful one. Here's the darker insight. When people feel psychologically safe, they don't need to be controlled. They self-regulate. They follow systems. They avoid extremes. They resist chaos. Not because they're forced to, but because stability feels worth protecting. This is power that doesn't announce itself. No threats, no alarms, no intimidation. Just normal life continuing. Nuclear weapons force obedience through fear. Stable systems create obedience through comfort. And comfort is quieter, cleaner, and far more efficient. No enemy required, no pressure applied. People adjust themselves. This doesn't mean fear-based power doesn't work. It does. but it creates fragile control, always one mistake away from disaster. Canada chose a slower, quieter, less dramatic form of strength, one that doesn't scare others and doesn't need to scare its own people either. So the real question isn't why Canada doesn't have nuclear weapons. The real question is this: how much power comes from fear and how much comes from making fear unnecessary? Once you start seeing this, you notice it everywhere, in countries, in companies, in systems, even in personal decisions. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent. If you enjoy exploring ideas like this, where psychology explains what headlines don't, subscribe, because understanding behavior is the strongest advantage there is.